You know what? I am so excited, guys. We're going to do another video. And today I have got Henry Bartsch. I said your name right.
How's it going, guys? That's me. You got it.
You know, I've done some other videos where, you know, people always ask me, how did you get started in this? And especially with all the projects we're doing. Well, it started off very rough and very simple. Okay. And Henry was very instrumental in this because back in the day, 5 years ago, something like that, Henry.
Yeah, 5, 6 years ago.
I collect World War I, World War II war guns, memorabilia, all that stuff. And I decided I was going to build a E11 blaster. How hard could that be, right? There's nothing to it. I got all these Sterlings, you know, so I get on the internet and holy crap, you know, with all of the builds we do or that you've seen us do, it always ends up being a very, very deep and endless rabbit hole. And this was no different. And I found this site called whitearmor.net. And when I got on it, started realizing there's more to this this old prop from a 1977 movie that everybody knows and loves. There's way more to it than just, you know, a few little changes. And as I got started in trying to make it, I was not very appreciated for it, and to say the least. Especially, I was getting in something that, you know, other people have been doing for 30 years, and I started building this stuff. And if it wasn't for you, Henry, this would have never happened. I would have never got started building blaster props.
That's very flattering because you've made quite the wave in the blaster community. That's for sure. Everyone knows who Field Marshal is, and Blaster Factories is, you know, even though it's a fairly new name on your store. Yeah, you were going by War Machine for a long time. People know that name as well. But yeah, and you know, your t-shirt gun, which is obviously came out of your paintball experiences, but when you were on White Armor, when I seen what you were trying to do, I immediately saw your thread and I was impressed and being like, who is this guy, and what is, and where is he from? And I kind of started talking to you on White Armor, and I was immediately surprised because you gave me your phone number and you asked me to call you, and I was like, wow, I've never had anybody on White Armor ask me to call them.
No, what a weirdo, right? I'm old. You're young, Henry, and I'm old. I'm this technology thing, you know, the face-to-face and actually being interacting personally is valuable. So thank God you did that.
I grew up on the internet, but my parents are kind of old-fashioned too, and they, you know, so I was not hesitant to pick up the phone and call you up and say hi, and I was so thankful I did because we forged quite a friendship ever since, and I'm very glad because you become one of my best friends, and definitely in the community, that's for sure.
Likewise, yes, absolutely.
But when you were mentioning that you wanted to maybe do and you were already leaning towards doing an aluminum build because you were finding out pretty quickly that putting that steel, a deactivated steel Sterling back together would not be easy, which is what the gun is based on. It's based on a World War II Sterling, which is it's the variant of it is the Mark IV, the L2A3, and it's a very specific one. It was mainly used by the British, and when they made it, it actually came out. That variant came out after World War II, but that's the one that ended up being used on set in Star Wars. It's kind of more recognizable now as a stormtrooper blaster than it is as a Sterling machine gun,
as a weapon of war. You know, I don't want to interrupt you because you got some good information on this. I have a lot of these cut up. Now we're in the U.S. Henry's in Canada, but in the U.S. here, you start putting these DACs back together, and you're going to have the ATF showing up at your door because this is actually. And I've got a bunch of these things in parts and pieces. These are full auto machine guns, and if you put them together in the U.S., you're going to be in trouble.
Canada too.
Europe, they actually have DACs that they've welded up the barrels and done other things, which, you know, all you guys overseas that are able to find those every once in a while, good for you. We hate your guts, you know, but they're not cheap, by the way. but you can
No.
still find them. And I don't think you can get them in Canada either, can you?
The deactivated ones are actually legal in Canada, but you're right about the price. They are expensive. So you're not very common. Like you're going to pay like $2,000 for a deactivated sterling. Now, demilled is what you guys are, what you have there. Demilled is, it's been chopped up. It's basically,
Yeah, ATF in the US makes you torch cut the receivers.
yes, it's now again, you can get a deactivated one here in Canada, but it's going to be expensive. But same thing, even then, especially nowadays and age with everything that's been happening, like you don't want to be walking around even in a stormtrooper costume with something like that. It's not only is it too heavy, it's just you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble probably, and you're going to get the cops' attention real quick. So I wouldn't recommend that. But
yeah,
and that's kind of
quite heavy. If you had to carry one for a while, I mean, if you did have one, that'd be a great display. But I think carrying it around would get a little tough, you know.
And it's like you said, this is the kind of like, it's like if you're going to put one back together, there's a whole legal issue there that you don't even want to deal with that. That's where your aluminum kit comes into play, and it's I think that's probably the best solution for any aspiring stormtrooper in my opinion. That's the main body. I have the kit here. Me and Chris spent probably 2 years designing this kit, eh, Chris?
It was not easy.
Yes.
Magwell, a lot of the geometry on some of that stuff is
yes.
not something you can just, you know, don't fall out of trees, you know. And you
no,
see
no, and
one back here too.
And that's where the journey began, was kind of starting with that, with trying to replicate that variant. And you had those parts on hand, so that made that somewhat easy for you. Not easy, I would say, maybe that's not the right word, but it made you had the reference available to you on hand.
Which is nice, because, you know, anybody that follows my builds, the worst part of doing, or the hardest part, is when you've got to create a prop from something you're seeing in a picture that you don't have in front of you. So you're scaling it and you're guessing, and you don't get to see all the sides. Man, that's hard. And you know, that's why for 30 or 40 years, that's why the props keep evolving. You get one more picture, you get one more this, you get one more sighting, you know, but this one, you know, we're lucky we didn't have to do that.
Yeah, having that on hand is definitely a big advantage for you know, a starting point for replicating that, the base blaster, which was a challenge in itself. But you know, it took several parts and pieces just to make the base blaster itself. But it's definitely the most accurate replica that money can buy, and I will say that with confidence, because I mean, I've seen master replicas, I've held it with my own hands, I've seen it with my own eyes.
I know, I've got one over here. I should have brought it. It's not bad, but they cut corners on it, I guess. But
yeah, and they even missed
as bad as some of their others.
No, it's not, but they even missed a few components on the blaster. They didn't even put power cylinders on it, or counter for that matter, you know. But I guess you could call it an ESB at that point, but still.
You know, and mentioning the aluminum kit, one of the biggest challenges I had was, number one, to make it a kit. Have something that someone can actually put together. And I'm noticing, you know, in all the replicas that I'm building, you know, I've got the guys who and usually these are there's two kinds. Let me just put it this way: somebody who wants it completely done, where, you know, they just bought it, it's in the box, they set it up there, they're happy with it. And the guys who actually want to build it and learn and accurize and make different variants, because good God, we're going to go into that today. There's variants on this blaster. And
if you're not, I mean, to me, that's half the fun, is building the prop. If you're not a crafty person, that might not be your thing. But for me, half the fun is always building it and kind of making it accurate and making it mine. And then the other half of the fun is just, you know, having the prop and using it and showing it off. And you know, if you're using it with a costume, wearing it or whatever.
I have noticed with the customers and talking to them, the ones that actually have bought the first kit, whatever it is, fought through it, didn't own any paint brushes, you know, exactly knives, anything, you know, and they just kind of, you know, trudge through it. And then at the end of it, they're so, you know, just, wow, look what I did. And, you know, you look at it, it's like going, you know, it's really maybe not that good, but, you know, you look at it like, well, man, actually, for the first thing you've ever done, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I see it in another kit. and it's better and it's better.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen a lot of customers evolve. You know?
Yeah, you got to start somewhere, and that there's no greater sense of accomplishment than holding a prop that you built, that you put together yourself.
Yeah.
You know, that's it's to me, that's what I'm a big prop guy, and my costumes kind of revolve around my props. You know, that's kind of where they start when I make my costumes. So I'm just a big prop guy. You know,
and I want to mention something too that's off topic. You know, Henry, I hear that you're pretty good with a sewing machine.
Yeah, I do sew a lot of things, but you know, it's a hobby.
Where,
and
where is it, man? You got one there somewhere, don't you?
Yeah, this is actually my sewing table here. My sewing machine's right down beside me, but I have a couple of them actually, and I do a lot of quilting. I make Kylo Ren stuff, like I make his tunic and stuff. You can see I do lots of stuff that I sew. I also make costumes. This is my Stormtrooper costume here. I made Death Trooper. I do Kylo Ren. There's just so many things. I do non-Star Wars costumes as well.
You've also got you make a little Beskar, that little wrap.
Yeah,
Beskar ingot.
That's right here.
Henry's running through this really fast, but that tunic that he's making for Kylo Ren is very complex. It takes a very skilled person on a sewing machine to do all that quilting. That costume is very intricate, and I have heard through other people that you make the best one.
Yeah, I've built a bit of a reputation for myself, and because of that, I have a wait list. But I do my best, and I try to make all my customers as happy as I make it as best as I can. I try to make them as happy as I would want to be if I were buying the costume. So, sewing is one of my passions. Like I said, props and costumes are kind of my life. So, and this E11 is one of my all-time favorite props, and I think I probably know more about this prop than any other prop than I've ever seen. It's my first favorite.
Because I couldn't have done it without you. I couldn't have done it. You know.
Oh, when I was a kid, this is the first kind of costume and prop that I fell in love with. It kind of started my love for props and costumes. I fell in love with the Stormtrooper the moment they came through that door in The New Hope. You know, I just.
I'm an Empire guy. I've always been the Empire. When they busted through in the opening scene and I was just a kid, I thought they were the heroes. You know, them pesky rebels. What the heck, you know?
And ever since I've studied this prop as much as I can, and I've joined the 501st since, ever since I was able to, and I try to make everything as screen accurate as humanly possible. And like you said, there's always new information coming out, so things do change and things evolve. But I'm glad that this prop came along when it did, because I think all the information that we needed is there. Obviously, we don't know what those power cylinders are. We'll talk about that yet, but that's still a mystery.
Well, you know what? That's one thing you just touched on it too. This is the art and the hobby that we've chosen. And I think with white armor and the RPF and dented helmet and the forums, those pages were a great place to really see good information and people striving to really do it correctly. The Facebook part of it, there's a lot of groups there. You print some piece of junk, put it up there, everybody goes, yeehaw, yay. I've said this before, and I didn't get hate mail from the last time I said this, so I'm pretty happy about that. But you know what? Maybe you can print some great stuff, but at least do a little research and try to, let's do it right.
No, you're
delve into it.
You're 100% right. Ever since those forums have been getting a lot less traffic, and a lot of the traffic has kind of shifted to Facebook and these new platforms. And as a result, there's a lot of the kind of detail-oriented focus has kind of shifted. You know what I mean? And the advent of 3D printing has changed that too. People just want to find the file, the easiest free file they can online, download it and print it or whatever. But more often than not, you're getting a copy of something was never accurate in the first place. And
you know what? I do 3D print some stuff, and I go to Shapeways or some company like that and do real high res stuff. It's not cheap, but I've also usually laser scanned the real prop, especially little greeblies and things, to do that with, and they come out pretty good because there's just no other option. That is good for that, but I don't feel like that's really used that way. most of the time with people, but
Well, and again, what we were talking about, having the vintage parts on hand is the most beneficial, because you can replicate them better than in any other situation. And now when we started with the base blaster, and having all those parts on hand, that definitely helped us. But when you don't have things on hand, you can't, like you said, you got to use photos, and that just makes things more difficult. There's a lot of guesswork involved in that. And I remember when I met you actually, I think that one of the first I found, even before I talked to you on White Armor, and this was kind of a coincidence, I had bought a counter. It was not that one, it was this one. It was this counter here. And I bought it from this V Music store on eBay, and it turned out that was this Chris guy I met on White Armor. And that
was years ago. I used to own a music store called Vandenberg Music. I did that for about 20 years. I obviously played in 80s bands, if you can't tell. And that was just my outlet when I make something or build something or whatever. It's on there, and it's still up, and people still buy props from me. V Music store is still on eBay. And Henry was buying these things, and I didn't realize the real value of them or what they really were kind of at that time, because I'm one of these guys. I actually had these things, just in my collecting over the years, just junk or whatever. But we'll go into that in a minute. But he actually found it's pretty interesting, because you've got all three sizes of these things that people are not aware of.
Yeah, and that was kind of a discovery too. I mean, at first they only thought there was two sizes, and it wasn't until Rogue One came along that I actually realized there was a third size. There's a small, medium, and large eagle on them. But you got all three there as well. Those are
you see the eagle logos. There's all small, medium.
There's actually I got a picture here. I can. I'm going to try and show, if you don't mind.
No,
people can see a little better here.
Beautiful.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah, the nice photos. You can see how they change, and obviously the big one didn't have it, but that's the thing. People didn't realize this stuff at first, and some of this information started coming out as we were going along.
And we're sharing this with you because I'm going to tell you something. You can buy the wrong variants of these.
Yeah. And if you do
later
that,
variants of the Heinzer counters, there's counterfeits,
Yeah.
And this might help you get a real one, especially when you find something old that has the old, whatever this zinc coating is on the back box here,
Yeah.
They're the rarest.
Now, I think it was called cadmium or something like that.
Yeah. They don't do it a lot in the U.S. because it's so toxic, I think.
Yeah. I think they outlawed it.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like and there's 6 digits on those. That's the version you want for the counters. You want the 6-digit version. And there's even when it comes to the 6-digit versions, there's different versions of that. Like there's ones that have the separate, like you had this one has separate windows.
Yep.
And then you got the solid window.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's 2 different kind of.
Yep. Do we know which one was used, or we don't know?
That's the thing. Like some of the best shots we have are resin cast, so you can't really tell. And I mean, it is very difficult to tell. Probably another issue open to debate is whether it was the solid window or the 6 individual windows. One of the better shots we have is probably from the side, and even then, like you can't tell. You just can't tell if it's because it's not a clear enough photo. Yeah. So.
Well, we're skipping our little order thing here, which doesn't matter,
we wanted to talk about the scopes too, kind of start with the scopes here.
Well, hey, I'm gonna put one more thing for you to get going, talking about the kits. When I started off with this aluminum thing, the real Sterling, everything's brazed on.
Yes, welded.
Yeah, and it doesn't come on off bayonet lug, all the stuff front sight. And Henry, you love these little things right here because you finally figured out what they are.
Yeah, we finally discovered what they're for. They're actually hand guards, so you wouldn't jam your finger either in the ejection port or blow your finger off by sliding it off the end of the rifle.
Makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Now that was a challenge, because what I wanted to do with this kit was to make sure that, number one, I mean, everything's put together on that one because it's all welded together, but I wanted to be able to screw it together. Now, those pieces there, obviously, I pre-welded those on for you. The stock lug screws on from the side. The mag well will screw on.
The bolts on, yeah.
Yeah, the trigger frame, which, you know
what?
It
bolts through the top and bottom too.
Yep, you've got a way to put it on and assemble it.
It's a solid kit.
Yes, I went through a lot of trouble, and these are a little. Sometimes you can find them used. I might have one here. It is a vintage.
The vintage grip sections.
Yeah, the grip for the E11.
Yes.
I actually laser scanned this grip, had an injection molding, copied every diamond knurl, every letter on this thing. It's just short of being a real SMG grip, but I did not put the plate is not down here embedded in
the bottom plate.
Yeah, and I did that on purpose because I don't want to be responsible for somebody putting this on a real gun.
On a real gun, even though it probably would fit.
It will fit. It just won't lock down.
Yeah.
It'd be
but they are virtually identical. I have the real one here. As you can see, it's all beat up. Yep. And then yours, I got one. They're literally identical. Yeah. You could, if you weathered it up enough, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Like Chris said, aside from that metal plate, the bottom plate in the bottom, there's no difference.
And you know, another thing that you helped me with too to notice, because a lot of times on a lot of my replicas here, this knurling, you can't see it probably.
No, so it starts about 3/4 of the way up and then it wraps on the top.
But if you notice, that's gone. It's pretty much rubbed off.
Worn off, yeah.
From a zillion years of use. Well, I did actually find one of these that had the knurl on it, and you know, just making me aware and getting the right knurl on the pieces. This has a very specific knurl on the front sight guard.
Yeah.
The rear, let's see, I've got the rear piece here somewhere too.
I remember we talked about this when you were making the kits too. I
almost did this wrong because you almost did. This is the only one I've got that has the straight knurl on it.
Yeah.
In the kit, obviously, if I can find
they have the diamond knurl.
Yeah, well,
which was weird. I remember when we were talking about this and you showed me your diamond knurl rear sights, and I think it was one of the first times I ever saw that.
Almost out of the probably 40, 50 of these cut up guns, I think this one I'm showing you is the only one that's right. I mean, for that variant. So I was lucky that I at least have a sample of it to be able to do. You might be able to see this a little bit clearer.
There you go. Yeah. You can you can see. That's another beautifully cast piece.
How did we get that to focus? There it is.
Put your hand behind it, but
I wanted you to see that knurl, but but you get the kit, you'll see what we're talking about.
Oh yeah, it's there. It's just hard to make out.
Oh, another cool thing too. Yeah, there you go. There you see it.
Yeah.
The camera's focusing better than mine. Another thing I want to make sure that, and this varies too, is the around this.
Yes.
Also check that out. Check the little guard. You see the little stamping right there?
Yeah, you got the stamp on the bottom of there.
Yeah, like the real one. And notice the one that I scanned, all of the all that stuff's in it too.
So, look at this. The bottom of this one has a number 10 on it.
Yeah.
And you can see it's got some crinkle paint on there a little bit.
Oh my God, you said crinkle paint.
I know. I don't want to start a war.
Going to kill you.
Now there were versions with crinkle paint on them.
You think Vern will
whether or
watch
not-
this? You think Vern's gonna watch this?
Yeah, I think you will. Whether or not the crinkle paint was used in the movie is debatable. I'm not going to say whether or not one way or the other, but yeah, some people think there was crinkle paint, some people think there wasn't, and I don't want to start a debate. I personally believe that some of them may have been, and some of them were painted over. I think they definitely painted them over with flat black because they all look flat black in the movie. So, but that they might not have all had the crinkle paint to begin with either. So it's debatable.
Everyone loves this part about the
Yes,
Knurling.
that's what's so cool about your kit too. If you buy the fully functional version of Chris's kit, his will do that too, and it's pretty awesome. I mean, you can't really beat that.
Yeah. Yeah, all this is a killer mechanism. Man, you know what? I say it all the time about these vintage guns, you know, whether it was the Mauser or whatever, those guys, the little monkey motion and little mechanisms that they create for all this is super awesome. And, you know, inside here, I've got the spring plate, you've got the hook, and you got the little hammer right here. Everything is just like the real one, you know, so you can pull it apart and squish your fingers in it all you want to, because that's about what it's going to do.
Yeah, you got to get pretty proficient with flipping that around if you're going to do it.
Oh yeah,
you'll squish your fingies.
Yep. Couple more pieces I'm going to touch on, and we'll get moving. Is because they're so cool. Is the bolt. Now this is a real Sterling bolt, you know, out of an SMG. Got the little extractor
heavy
here. Yes, very heavy.
Real steel.
Yep. And here's the aluminum one that I did. And this little piece here, you know, there again, I wanted to make it to where, you know, you've got a pin and a spring, and this thing actually will move a little bit because it shows on the side of the blaster. So it needed to be there. Plus it's cool. And it's something else to add a little more realism to it. The only thing I've done is I have cut it out the back and made a lot of room so you can get wires out of the trigger frame, you know, up into the mag well, so people put sound and lights and all that stuff in, which, you know, the trigger frame, which I just had here a second ago, I'll touch on it because copying it and the trigger group, which I got so many parts out here, losing stuff. Well, anyway, oh, where's the trigger? I want to show you all the trigger guard though, because oh, there it is. Now, bunch of really cool stuff about this. I had to stamp this trigger guard, and literally it is a direct copy of the real one. And this one actually could go on the real thing. It's really nice.
You actually got the concave, the shape there too.
Yeah,
it's like.
Yes, it is. It's like the shape. And by the way, that was tough too, because most of these old DX, the trigger guards beat up and bent and goofy.
Yeah.
So I got the best of them to do that.
Wow.
Also in this picture, you ought to be able to see the contours on this very killer, very comfortable trigger. It's a really good trigger.
It is very comfortable trigger. It's very well designed.
Yep. Pin on the side, just like the real thing. You see all that? Oh, and the safety. That's the one thing I had to make that safety. And you can see the knurling right there.
Yeah, and the same knurling that was on the front sight guard.
Yep, look at that. And it's on there. Scanned one of those and got that. So I think I went through a lot of trouble to make sure we got the detail on this, because it was too important. There's too many. I mean, there's too many other things out there. They may from 20 feet away look right, but when you get up close to this thing, literally, if you paint this thing right, it's going to look like a real thing. So
yes, it will.
We're going for.
Yeah, and that's what you want. I mean, like, people spend a lot of money on their costumes and then they kind of cheap out on the prop. I don't like that. I like the prop to kind of be on the same level as the costume, you know? Yeah,
and that is a shame. I spend $2,000, $3,000 building a costume and have some, you know, their blaster looks like they bought it at the drugstore or something.
Some toy painted black.
Yeah, that's the way that is. Now I ain't gonna pull this out of the box, but I did want to show you we do have that, we got the right sight blade, and we also, the bayonet lug, we make a replica for it, and it's got all the cuts and everything, looks just like it. And that's on the kit too. So.
Oh yeah, that bayonet lug is it's on, it's, you know, you even see it in the movie too. It's there. And the rear end cap.
Yeah, when I scanned it, I didn't even realize I did this, but you see the little C down there?
Yeah, you got that in there too.
That's actually off the real one. So
because you cast them, right? So
yeah, they're cast.
That's a direct casting.
That would have been hard to machine. It is a weird, it's a weird shape. They had to have done the same thing with this.
Oh yeah, it's tapered and everything. There's so many like radiuses and stuff on there. But yeah, that the kit itself, in terms of the base blaster, you mean you can't get anything better than that.
No, and you notice this piece here, it does the twist lock on there too.
Yeah, and you need the spring.
I want to touch on this real quick. This thing actually goes back a little bit when it gets spring tension on. A lot of people think it stays tight. It doesn't.
No,
it actually goes back a little bit, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And a lot of people asking if it's on there right, but that's correct. It has to move so the stock will latch into it.
Well, that's the stock. That's what locks the stock in place. It's supposed to move back and forth so that the stock can lock into place. It's the main spring that keeps the tension on it.
Mm-hmm. Boy, I tell you, there's a lot to talk about on these things. It doesn't end.
Yeah. Well, we should also talk about the scopes. Let me just load up a picture here. I'm going to load up a picture quick.
While you're finding that, I'm going to show, and I've done this for the DL44 too, to show everybody where they come from.
Okay.
Because, you know, these are not something that were bought off the shelf that some soldier carried in the field. They were actually, they were in the tank periscopes, Sherman tank periscopes.
Yeah, it came out of a Sherman M4 tank, which was, there was a lot of those. The Americans had a lot.
Can you see that? You can see the scope in this one.
Yeah. So there's a 45-degree angled mirror right there, and and you see the end of the scope.
Yep. The scope is actually sitting right here.
Yeah, like that.
Well, actually, it's upside down, but it's actually in there like this. But
they're spotting scopes, so it was basically to get the general distance of your target.
Yep.
To find the distance of your target.
Holy crap, that works really well right there.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, eh? Wow.
Yeah. Hey, but you know what? I was buying these at the Army Navy store when I was a kid, and over here on my R&D shelf, I've still got 6 or 8 of these things that are still in the box, still wrapped in that waxy cosmoline paper that have never been opened. And I believe this one is an A2, the 42. I think that's what's in this one.
That's correct.
They've got M19s in them and things like that.
You got a bucket of them there too. You got a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, this is my make everybody sick and throw up box. I've got another box of M19s too. Now, you know what I do is I collect these things and find them. I do put them on occasionally you'll see a very special build where I'll put a real Heinzer counter on and a real scope on it, you know, and put it up for sale. You know, I'll do that every so often. That's not a cheap build, but I know there's guys out there who like that stuff, you know.
There's a lot of purists. There's a lot of purists who would go for that. You know, like I have that here. This has got real scope and it's got real everything on it. So I even have a real grip with a real trigger guard, a real end cap. It's as real as I could make it, without, you know, breaking the law or anything like that. But yeah. In terms of the scopes, there were several variants used. I can show 2 of them here right off the bat from A New Hope. You can see the gap in between the prism housing here and the first lag. That's a 1943 M38. The 1942 didn't have that gap in between the prism housing and the lag. It was all solid there. And then we also have an M19 here, but you can't really see it that well up down here in the corner because it's behind. It's behind there.
Well, a lot of the guys out there realize they don't realize the M19 was actually on some of the E11 blasters too, because the DL44 guys, you know, they see the M19s all the time.
There's a carport one without you have the brackets there. This is without the bracket.
Yep.
They come on those brackets. I have that bracket here. They can be hard to get off of there sometimes.
They are. Plus you get the real screws, and that's another thing that gets lost in a lot of people's builds too.
Yes.
Is they don't use the right mounting screws.
Yes.
And on the real scope. And now here's that one you were talking about there with
that's the 43. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd actually like to show the difference between those two. I can show. I have, you know, this build has the 42, and there you go. That's the difference. It shows it.
You can see there. Now I love this scope, and I didn't realize how good a scope this was until you pointed this out. But
yeah, that number 4 is
that's a rare one to find.
Yeah, the reason I like that one is because it's part of my favorite blaster, and it's definitely kind of the one you see it on a lot of official images of the E11 from like Lucasfilm published Lucasfilm licensed images. Another good way to show the difference here between the 43 and the 42 is right here. You can clearly see the gap in between the first leg and the housing on the 43, and the 42 doesn't have it. So yeah, that's another good image there.
Yeah, and also this scope, I still have the original little cheese head screws in here that mount.
Yes.
And now you'll find these scopes and the screws are gone.
Yes.
Of course, this is a replica of it. Well, this isn't here. All the pieces here come. This is how the kit comes. But there's another thing that I always keep going back to, drives me crazy about when people make props or they're copying other people's props.
Yeah.
They always miss these details. But look at those screws.
They're cheese head screws. They're smooth.
Focus on that.
Slotted cheese head screws.
Yep.
Put your hand behind it, Mike. There you go.
There you go. Yep. And the rest of this, you know, all goes. This thing actually assembles, kind of goes together like the real one.
Yeah.
You've got domed lenses in it, and
you got the brass ends so that you can weather it to look like a real scope. Like when you look at a real one that's nice and weathered, you'll see the tips are weathered, right? And then,
look, I've kind of started doing that on this one right here. This is for a customer, and I'm kind of distressing it too, but. You know, I've got really good at this. I can actually distress one of these things and set it in a pile of my real ones, and you'll have to look for a second.
Yeah,
you're grabbing the right one.
Well, Chris has got quite a little process. He came up with the right color paint and brass paint there, and then he weathers it in a way that it looks awesome. A little bit of dry brushing. Yeah,
and you know what? There's I actually from kind of from Scott Juarez and other people and their distressing techniques. You know, there's especially if you go to like models and people that have built a lot of models and things and distress stuff, you can see a lot of hints like that. But you know, it helps when you spray this first. In fact, on my blog, on my site, you know, I spray I tape these off and I spray this with a bronze paint, not brass. For some reason, it doesn't look right. And this brass or whatever they use on here is really dark.
Yeah, the military brass, like you said, it's not like a normal.
Yeah, and so I use bronze. I hit it with that first. The brass I use here will, you know, you can have it oxidize or darken it up really quickly. You know, just with you know, a little bit of acid or brass black or something.
Yeah.
Once you spray that, you know, you spray this with the bronze paint, and then the next thing I use some. You want to kind of put a little texture on it. This will be impossible to see on here, but the body section's cast and it's got some texture, and you can kind of see it here, but the front's kind of slick. So I put a little texture paint in the center here, but I leave this flat black and smooth. And I use a crayon to fill in the engravings, which I have copied on the M38. And of course, it probably won't. It's going to glare, but you can.
Yeah, I mean, you could take a fine paintbrush, put white paint in there, but the wax.
And there's people really good at doing that.
Yeah.
And the last detail that's real important that everybody misses on every freaking cheap piece of crap they 3D print is because they can't is put these screws on there. Look at those cheesehead screws.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And you copied that.
And
You copied that perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I sent them off and did them legit. So.
Oh yeah, you actually had them.
Outside, you can't tell. It looks right.
Oh yeah. In terms of that, I was going to show actually. I wanted to show. We're talking about the image where that number 4 scope. This book is a pretty amazing book. It's hard to find. It's called Star Wars Chronicles. It usually goes for a lot of money. One of my favorite E11 props is in this book. It can be seen on page 52 and 91. I'll show it here. I got a good image of it. Let me just show it. So here's the main image of it. And as you can see, the number 4 scope is there. It's got the large eagle that we were showing earlier, as you can see, without the Henxler logo. Now, these are the 2 of the components we've discussed already. These wires here is kind of a point of contention. It's also debatable because this prop was photographed for this book after the movie, and these wires are believed to have been added after production. Even though wires can be seen on the E11 in the movie, it's not really curly like that. You guys said I can show you the scene where the wires are. I'd like to show that as well here.
Did you talk about your discovery? Is that the wire you're talking about?
Well, just the curly wires. Yeah. So this is where the idea of the curly wires came from, for that prop in that book. But this is what they actually look like on screen. They're kind of straggly wires. They're not curly per se. But the wire you were asking about, Chris, is this mounting wire. Now that we're on the topic of the counters and the scopes, I'd like to talk about the scope rail itself.
Right.
And yeah, so this wire is.
We can go back to that too. I mean,
we can go back to it because that was added after the fact. So initially, these counters were actually glued onto the side of the blaster. Right. They were glued very crudely glued to the side of the Sterling machine gun, and I think the production crew quickly found out, especially after filming scenes like the trash compactor, that it wasn't holding up and stuff was falling off the prop. The counter was falling off the gun, and the power cylinders too. They fell off as well. So they eventually resorted to wiring them on with wires.
At least that's the theory anyway.
Yeah, and that's the theory anyways. And you can see the wires wrapped around them and stuff that they resorted to. You can kind of see it here, but again, that's not what people like to do, and even gluing them on is not a very ideal way to do it. So what people do and what the accepted way of doing it is a bracket attached to the scope rail, which is almost completely invisible. It's the way it's done, the way the prop is, it's very hard to actually see that bracket. Wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you agree, Chris?
Yeah, in fact, you can't see it really. I mean, unless you get
the scope. Yeah, because the scope kind of overhangs the rail, and it's actually kind of difficult to even see that, even when you're So it's very well hidden, and it's kind of become the accepted way of mounting your scopes. Even in the 501st, it's accepted. It's not technically screen accurate, but it's a lot better than gluing it on or wiring it around the scope feed, if you ask me.
And that's not saying, that somebody wouldn't do that. I mean, if you're making a display and you want it to be hardcore,
if you're a purist and you want to glue it on or wire it around the scope feet, then go right ahead. I respect you for that, but it's not for everyone. If you're going to be trooping with it, if you're going to be carrying it around, you might not want to do that. Because you might lose your counter, and those can be expensive.
That's another thing. You get told to people, go, oh, those things are cheap. I used to buy those for $50. These things will cost you $400 or $500 all day long.
Yeah.
And if you really want one bad, you're not going to find it. You're going to pay more than that to pry one loose from somebody. You know,
Yeah.
these are,
And if you
got
try to
very
cheap
rare.
out, you try to cheap out and pay a lot less, you're going to get the wrong variant.
Yeah.
Or it's not going to have all the parts. It's not going to have the socket cover, what you need, the socket cover.
You know, and I can't tell you, you know, when I first started in this and realizing that I had some cool stuff that actually showed up, you know, finding the real parts and pieces, there's a lot of joy in that. You know, and I think a lot of people across the planet will go, well, I ain't spending that kind of money, you know, I ain't doing this or that. I mean, what the hell else you got to do? You know?
No,
I mean,
exactly. Like
it's a really cool thing to actually get out there and go looking for the vintage parts and actually use them. I mean,
yeah,
it's hard.
like
It's a challenge. You're not going to do it.
It's a big challenge. And you can't really do it all at once. When I first, you know, for the average person trying to do this, I bought my pieces. I spread it out over a couple of years. Like it took me a while to collect the parts to build my first E11, and not just because I had to save the money, but because I had to find them. So,
well,
yeah.
You know, I was thinking a story with this. You know, when I needed this particular one, I can't remember who I bought it from. His name, because I think.
Well, because you wanted the number 4. You wanted the number 4 on it.
You know, at the time there was none. I mean, months had gone by. They still don't show up very often. You know, and that one popped up, and I'm pretty sure I gave about $600 or $700 for that one, which is, you know, that and back 5 years ago, everybody thought I was freaking crazy. But you know what? I've seen people sell them for more than that, because you know they've gone as high as I've seen on eBay for $800 or $900. You know, one.
That's what I mean. Like, it's because people, most of the time, people know what they are. Now, you will find the odd like person from a factory selling them does have no clue that they were used on Star Wars, but that's just luck.
I've picked a few up for a couple $100, and you know when it gets here, you do backflips. You know,
Yeah, I know. I've been lucky a few times myself, but yeah, most of the time people know exactly what it is, and then it'll say Star Wars right in the listing. So there's quite a markup on the props like that.
You know, after this video, you're gonna have thousands of people trolling eBay now for another one pops up. So
everyone's gonna be hounding you for that red bucket of scopes you got back there and counters.
They'll see them on my site come out one at a time, you know, on a blaster. So
yeah, that's and in terms of the scope itself, the scope rail, there was actually there's 3 variants of the scope rail too. They weren't all the same. I don't know if there were several people in the prop department making these things, but there appears to be 3 different variants of the scope rail, or at least in terms of the mounting method. The one that Chris offers is probably the best, most ideal one, and probably the most rock solid mounting.
It is, and I'll tell you, it's not totally screen accurate because I idealized it to make it work. You know, you're going to show pictures of the one that the Z bend, and the one that goes back here that has the bend up, and this, and they're a little bit different, but I wanted the thing to be a little easier to go together and to actually function and hold this stuff on there, kind of like what people think it does. I mean, you see that when I have to idealize something to make it actually function. But you know what? I've seen people take that rail that comes with it and they'll modify it to the versions you're about to show them.
Yeah, like I'll show a couple different versions of the mounting method here. There's a couple different ones, and mostly on the rear is where the differences are. There's one like this, kind of like what Chris has here, and there were ones exactly like what Chris has, is mounted right through the sight hole. Then there's like the Z bend, and it was riveted directly to the Sterling Sterling receiver itself, so it was kind of right through the receiver. And then there's one which is just kind of bent up tab behind the bolt. But even aside from that, there's another one here, like what Chris has is kind of screwed straight down into the sight rail. But this is from the blaster reference on FSID, the white armor you were talking about. That site has a great reference if you want to look up a lot of these details. It has, you know, if you want to refer back to that. It
That's
has all.
somebody's build on there, and that's one of their threads that come from, wasn't it?
Well, this is actually the reference thread. It's the
Okay.
generic reference thread that you can refer back to if you're building if you're doing an E11 build.
Okay.
So, and I've actually contributed to that thread myself a bit. I'm not on the team personally. I did the Rogue One E11 reference thread myself, but I did contribute to this team a little bit to help with their thread. So,
yeah, you know what? Also, my field marshal build, where you see where I started all of this, starts on white armor. You want to see where all this began? Go to white armor. Go look at the E11 section for A New Hope, and these threads are there, like he's talking about. Also, we're going to talk about Playful Wolf and the power cylinders, and the field marshal build. They're extensive, and they're I mean, I think mine's 30 or 40 pages long, going through. You know, I show all the machining processes, all the aches and pains of finding the stuff, or so it'd be a really good thing to go see. So
yeah. And actually, recent discovery that I made that I actually helped contribute to that was I showed it to you when I found it, because it's kind of a big deal when I found out. But they, on those rear sights, I don't think it was on all the blasters, but on some of them, they actually replaced the pin for the rear sight with a nut and a hex bolt.
Yeah.
And you can tell this is the one with the tab bent up behind it. So they've completely removed the rear sight and put a hex bolt in there.
Wow.
Yeah, and you can actually tell too on a few of them. It looks like it's a slotted hex bolt. But yeah, it's definitely a bolt. That was kind of the other discovery I made recently with the advent of 4K on Disney Plus.
Wow.
You know, this 4K is, we're making new discoveries all the time on not just blasters but lightsabers and everything. People are finding out new things all the time now, and it's just like new stuff coming to light. Even now in 2021, we're still finding out new things about a movie from the 70s.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's the fun part of it. It never ends. If we knew all there was to know, and this thing was simple, and there was a million of them, nobody'd give a crap about it. But it's a challenge. Keeps you interested.
So I think we've pretty much covered the scope rail, and the counter mounting method. We talked about the counter variants. Let's talk about the power cylinders, Chris. The mystery of the power cylinders.
Oh,
now,
hey, right before you do that, I forgot to show you this. I was going to show the replica next to it too, but I actually cast these individual parts for it, and it has the little mock internals, and you get the dials don't work. That would have been too expensive, but you gave me a couple numbers to put on there that have significance. So that's cool. And you've got this piece here, and this isn't the complete kit, but there's also I lost a little window on my desk here, but here it is.
It's very accurate. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like you'd almost be hard pressed to tell from a real one once you assemble it all.
Exactly. This little window falls out and is lost on a lot of these counters, on the vintage ones, and I sell more of these to those guys doing that, to replace lost ones on real counters. It's amazing.
Oh yeah.
But you can't tell. It's a 1-to-1. So
yeah, no, you did a great job on those too, and they're clear. You can actually see through them, and they actually do magnify the numbers and everything, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Every time you build one of these replicas, it's not as simple as just there's 30 pieces to it. There's all, and they're all detailed, and you don't get away with anything. You don't.
I remember when you made those counter replicas, like you even made like little paper wraps for the coil to have the eagle on it and everything, the little wires in there, stuff people don't even see. Yeah, there's stuff people don't even see. Like it's all inside the counter, and you still made it. You know what I mean? Like that's how the level of detail your kits go to.
Look at that right there. That is I found a huge box of these. Are burn up coils, because real quick, we were about to leave this. We were about to not mention this, but these counters are used in industry. They're counters for looms and production machinery, industrial.
Yeah, manufacturing.
Yes, and this is a burn-up coil, and the repairman obviously was keeping all these things, but I got them. So I have been putting them in the replica, which is cool because, you actually can see that part of it,
Yes.
And,
if you look under the scope rail, you can kind of see through it.
Because when I run out of these, you get a 3D printed one because you don't see it. It's great for drilling into to mount it, but when at all possible, I try to put the little vintage parts in there for people. And also, I wanted to show you this too. I think I showed you this before, Henry.
That's kind of what it looked like in the factory. I mean, that's the socket there.
Yep.
They'd be locked like that because they wouldn't want no one to mess with the reset buttons until they were ready to reset the production line. Yeah.
Yep. So, there's all that stuff. Okay, counters are done.
Okay, yeah, I think we've covered pretty much everything with the counters. Even the curly wires on them, but we were I did mention that, and I'll show it again here. I'm in a different picture. I'd like to show. This is another official image from Lucasfilm. Yeah. These curly wires, again, they were inspired by the previous image I showed you. Again, I've put them on my props before because a lot of people think they're supposed to be there, and no, I put them on today just to show you how they go, but I actually don't keep them on.
I'm disclosure here. Vern Beezer is going to kill you.
Yeah, no, I just put them on there today to show you that they're, because we have pictures that they're actually red and green, and we've been able to discern that. But if you are concerned about the colors, but again, the curly wires are not on screen. There were some straggly wires there, but they weren't curly like that. Those were added in that book after the movie was filmed. So I just wanted to cover that as well in the counter section as well. We'll move on. We'll move on to the
live now. I don't know.
Yeah, the power now. As far as the power cylinders go, it's going to be, we actually don't know what they're from to this day. We do not know what they are. Nobody knows what they've been ripped out of. Obviously, some kind of electronics. We're thinking obviously it's something to do with audio because it's got tube sockets in it for vacuum tube.
That's actually the prop off the speeder, which is a full rack. That is a tube rack. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are capacitors, and the empty sockets there from tubes, from vacuum tubes.
Vacuum tubes. This is like you said, this is the hood of Luke's land speeder.
Yeah, and whatever they're out of, it must have had a lot of power because that's a lot of vacuum tubes. I mean, my Marshall amp that I played with for a zillion years, I had two EL34s at 50 watts that blow you out of the room. So I have no idea. That's some kind of, me personally, I think it's some type of public address system, some kind of PA system.
Most likely.
Now, when you get into the thread, now I did mention Playful Wolf. We don't know who that is. He's on White Armor, did a massive thread and research on these power cylinders. And that's where we're pulling this reference from right now. Isn't that right?
His name is Andy, but he goes by Playful Wolf Cub on White Armor, and he probably did the most extensive research thread on these things that anyone has ever done. And I mean, it went for a long time. He talked to people in the audio industry, professionals, and even then we got a few tips, but no help in terms of exactly what it's from. These things also ended up on top of the mouse droids in the movie that you see on the Death Star. This is the top of a mouse droid.
Guys are always dealing with this. And see, they're 3D printing this stuff, or they're scratch building something to look like it. But they don't realize, there you go, mouse droid builders. Look at the detail on that. Try to reproduce that on those little robots.
Yeah, exactly. It's near impossible. I mean, it's the amount of detail in these. I have another good shot of it here too as well. Close up kind of going on here. You can even see the numbers, but we've not been able to find out exactly what these are or what they're from. But the metal mic capacitors is one thing we have been able to find that are on these things. Now, Chris actually was able to get the exact variant of them. Now, these ended up on a lot of props. It's not just the E11. They were on they ended up on the targeting systems of the Y-wing bombers. They ended up, you can even see them on the wall of Luke's X-wing as he approaches Dagobah. Like, they were used all over the place in the movie.
Yeah, well, give you an idea. This is what you're looking for.
Yeah,
you know,
that's what you'll see.
Yep. And this is shape E.
Yes, which is my favorite one.
And,
the
and
one
I
from
actually, this is the first project I ever do, and I still sell these and build these by hand. You know, every little detail of them. You know, this is D.
Now, he went AWOL on White Armor. He hasn't signed in I don't even know how long.
This is.
I think he even has a bunch. I even think he even has a bunch of pending orders that didn't get delivered. I don't even know.
Yeah, I'm on that list. There's B.
Yeah,
It's got the swoop down.
And so Chris is. Yeah, these ones here that Chris are showing they're literally the best ones that money can buy. I'll tell you right now, you cannot get better power cylinders anywhere else in the world, unless you can get your hands on a set of Andy's, which his are more like art. They're not as indestructible as Chris's. Chris's are literally welded together, and you could like throw them down the stairs and they would be fine.
Yeah, they start off this way. And you know, Andy did a really good job of scaling, but you know, Andy missed a couple things, especially with the two longer cylinders. And this is my opinion with my scaling, but I think he ended up using tubing that he could get off the shelf, and that won't work. I had to make them scale against the known. The best thing to happen when you don't have the real part is that if there's some part next to it or on it that you do know what it is, so that you can get a measurement on it. And God, I hope this shows up, because you know, you see these in my posts all the time. This is a real metal mic capacitor.
Yes. Now that's rare.
I do make every once in a while somebody want me to use real metal mics, and they're expensive. I won't lie to you, and they're rare as hell.
They're rare.
They're
super so rare. Hard to find. Chris is lucky to even have them. Like, you're lucky you even got them, because we didn't. That's one of the last things you found, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, and actually, one of my buddies over in Germany actually found the things and got them to me. But the replica ones, which I'm trying to get to here,
I found
my poor helpers here. We actually turned these on the lathe, and I'll just show you these. But but here you go, and they actually have all the markings on them.
Oh yeah, you did an amazing job on your replicas. They look almost indiscernible from the real thing. Like,
they're really, really good. They are. It's surprising to get there's two little, the way they make these things, there's two little rubber bungs that are actually pressed in, and there's a foil inside of it. You have to go back and look how vintage capacitors are made, but I actually had to reproduce that just with the lathe. It's just a solid piece, but there you go.
These are ones I found. These are not the correct variant, but they're very close. They're like,
they
half a
think
millimeter
the right
off
length, but they're a little bigger in size. They're a little fatter, but I mean, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell if you put it on the thing, but they are, and those are super rare too.
I actually do have them, and I'm willing to sell them. And I've made my own kit the same way that Andy used to make his. Mm-hmm. Now, before I ever met you, when I saw Andy's thread, I followed his thread, and I literally built my own following his thread using the exact same parts that he did. Aside from the power, I used my own metal mic. These ones I found, there's slightly different variant metal mics.
I'll show you in the back of. Henry just showed you the racks with all the cylinders in it, with them all lined up. Here's how they got cut out of there. Here's this, and there again, this is off of Playful Wolf Cubs thread that he had. Let me see if I can share this real quick.
I just stick mine on with magnets.
There you go. Can you see that? So you can see how where they cut it out of the back of the rack there. A, B, C, D, and E. Is that
this is good? Now that's Andy's research PDF there.
It is. And you know what? This is, anybody's building E11s that don't have this printed out in a notebook when they're building this is an idiot, because this is how you do it. I mean, this guy did some really good research.
Oh yeah, I mean, I used his research when I built my power cylinders. Oh no, I'll be the first to admit it.
And you can see, I'll scroll through some of it here, and this picture here, you can see the little ends and the metal mics poking through.
Yeah. There's a picture there. That was from the side of the targeting system on the Y-wing bomber there.
Where is it? Right. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. You can see, if you go back, there's a piece of wood there on the end of that Sterling. You can see the chunk of wood inside the magazine. Yeah.
Well, you know what? If you go to my site, you can see me chopping one of these things off. It's not easy.
No.
To cut these mags, they built these mags where a truck could run over them. And when you cut them, you have to replace the little flanges on the side. And I got a feeling when the prop guys were doing this, they hacked them off, shoved something in the hole, and didn't worry about trying to put the plate back on it, you know, so.
Yeah. Well, I know we wanted to touch on that too. Those magazines, actually, they won an award for one of the best magazines ever designed.
Yeah.
Because they're that good.
here's a good picture too. You there?
Yeah, I see you there. That's good. You can probably zoom in too if you need to. I don't know if you can, but it looks good though.
Yeah, because you can tell whoever cut these, whatever prop guy had that rack, and he had to cut out, you know, these things across the line there to get these little individuals out. And you can see where the resistors were and the metal mites were. But yeah, that's one of the funnest things. That's what got me hooked on it, was the detail from that.
Yeah, and that's how he ended up with different shapes too, just because cutting them out, he kind of hacked up. Just random ass shapes he ended up cutting it out in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, and that's the thing, like those power cylinders people are still trying to find out what they are. And now we assume they were glued on, just like the counter was initially, and then they fell off in the trash compactor scene. Which you can check it out yourself, and then they wired it on with a wire the same way they did with the counter. It's either a wire or a very thin tie, but I don't think they had those back then. It's probably a wire.
Wow.
I don't think
Henry, I've never seen that before. That's crazy. That's newfound stuff there.
Yeah, see that they literally wired the power cylinders. That's the bottom of the power cylinder there, or the mag well there, you can see.
Well, as an engineer and artist and machinist and all the other things that I am, I hate glue.
Me too.
I hate gluing things on so bad. Glue is useless. Glue's for a Tamiya model that's not ever going to be touched. Glue doesn't work, you know, and I guess it's quick and easy, but I try to always, if possible, in any of the props I do, try to incorporate some way to really fasten it down. I hate when things fall off.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like with that counter bracket situation, like we're just lucky there was a rail there to put a bracket on. You know what I mean? Like that's that.
And I didn't invent that. Somebody else was doing that.
No, someone came up with that long before I ever built my first E11. I remember the first time I saw that solution, I'm like, oh, that's clever. Like it's kind of the accepted way of doing it now, you know what I mean? Because it's not screen accurate, but it's the best way to do it. And
you know what, the looks of it screen accurate, you know, when you look from the sides, it's fine.
It looks fine. It looks perfect. It doesn't look bad. It doesn't look inaccurate. You know, it doesn't look wrong. It looks fine. So, and it's very well hidden. So that's important. That's good too.
Yeah, I got a little thing here. You know, a lot of people get confused about all the pieces they're going to need. And on my site, on the Blaster Factory site, if you don't want to buy the whole kit together, all of these come, you know, individual packs you can get too. And it's good for the guys that are doing pipe builds too. There's some people doing a lot of the pieces themselves, and that's fine. And you just need a trigger frame or whatever. But, you know, these assemblies are separate. You don't have to get the whole kit. You know, especially
That's convenient.
well, yeah, and if money's an issue, because this thing probably starts out at $300 something, and then you got a few things to add to it. But I try to do all of them as economic as I can, and the more volume I do on them, and the years go by, they'll come down a little bit too, I hope. But it's still, it's also not going to warp in the sun. It's all metal. It's something you can be proud of too. So there's definitely a value there.
I just I like if the prop was metal to begin with, I like to make it metal. That's just the way I am. If like the grip is plastic, so I'm fine with having a plastic grip. That's it's accurate. Or like the socket plug on the counter, they were plastic, so that's okay. Or the plastic cover on the counter, they were plastic, so that's okay. Like as long as it was plastic originally, then I'm okay with it. But like if it was metal, then I like to make it accurate. And
speaking of those socket plugs, I actually have a whole lot of vintage ones. I got lucky and found, because that's actually what's on my replica is a real vintage plug there.
Yeah. So that's right there. That you're buying his replica, you're getting a part of it's real. And same with like when you buy his kit and you get the vintage magazine that goes with it, those magazines, Chris and I have talked several times. They're not making those anymore, and Chris still doesn't know what he's going to do yet when he can't get no more. But we'll figure that out. But we'll cross that bridge.
There are some gun places they'll still have them, and you'll pick them up for $40 to $80 depending. Then you got to cut them up, but they are disappearing, like the real vintage ones.
And cutting them up, like Chris said, is not easy. You need a powerful bandsaw with a strong blade.
Yeah, that's the little thing. There's a little plate. This little plate slides over.
Slides over the end. You got to recreate those tabs.
I have these cut. They're cut at the second weld right here, which is the most common one. And I've done them, for people, but it will save you some time. But yeah, it's not as easy as you think.
No, and I think the reason they cut them down, like there were live fires on set they were using to fire it to get the muzzle flash and to get the bit of recoil on screen. Those guns that were firing blanks, I believe they were using a shorter, stubbier magazine from the Sterling company. Now, like is that a real one?
This is one of those. Yeah.
So that's not cut down.
No, this is a low cap mag. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think they had a few of those on set, and then they cut the rest down because they didn't have enough to go around for the non-firing props and stuff. Because I don't think they would have done that for the live firing ones. You know what I mean? They may have, because you can still make them function.
Yeah, they will function. Now, when they come from me, I chop the spring. You're not going to have any spring tension in it, because I'm not sending out a mag that's going to function. But the rollers are still in there. But it could be done, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it also makes it look less like I think the reason they use the shorter ones is because it looks even less like a Sterling. It's even less recognizable, even though the gun was already kind of a strange looking gun to begin with.
Well, it took me almost my whole life to figure it out. So I wasn't paying attention to it. So.
Yeah, I think that's obviously what attracted this prop makers to it. The side mag.
That's one thing I love about the original trilogy is I collect vintage guns like Lugers and C96 Mausers and the Sterlings and all that old stuff like that. I love it. And I already had this stuff. I just kind of fell into the trap,
Yeah. I think the only thing left to cover now would be the T-Track. There's not really much to talk about with that. I mean, the T-Track, it was basically sliding track from cupboard doors, from old cupboard doors. Yeah. It's just plastic. It's just plastic, extruded plastic. I got a photo here I can show.
And of course, if you're in this enough, that this stuff is on the lightsabers. It's on the ep3 Return of the Jedi blaster. There's little bits and pieces of it that they use all over the props. So
yeah, it's been used in several pieces and several props in the movie. So that kind of gives you an idea what that looks like. There's a really good job Chris has done in applying them.
You know what? I after talking to you and Scott Juarez and Verbeezer and other guys that do it, I've seen a lot of different techniques. And I think I really got good at this when I finally quit trying to do it good. You know, if that makes sense. Trying to put this in perfect is not how it looks on the blaster.
No, they're kind of bowed a little bit. They're not.
Yes.
They're not really perfect.
Yep.
Got a good example of that too.
They cut angles in them. They heat them up, stick them in there, bend them over, do the other side. And literally, when I learned just to do it, just don't think about it. Cut the damn thing, stick it in the holes, and bend it. You know.
Yeah.
And I don't use, some people use a torch or a lighter. I actually use a heat gun that's sitting on the table where I can kind of control the heat a little bit.
If you have a heat gun that has kind of a sharper tip on it, or that can work good too. I've heard people using the cigarette lighter. If you're going to use a cigarette lighter, you got to be talented with it. You got to know.
Every time I use open flame on it, I end up bubbling the stuff or burning it or melting.
That's what I mean. You have to know
get it where it starts to kind of get malleable. And as soon as it starts bending, stick it in the hole, bend it over. You know, you kind of let it set for a second, take it out, do the other side, and then you kind of work them in. It's not really that hard, but you can't think about it too much, you know.
And a good trick,
I think that's on my site too, where I'm doing that.
Yeah. And a good trick is, once you get those tips in, is you can use the heat gun again to straighten it back out to lock it in place. Yeah. Because once you reapply the heat to the same spot where you bent it, the track will want to naturally straighten back out.
Yeah.
And that'll help you kind of lock it in place. Yeah, I mean, is there anything else that we can cover? I don't think there's much else. I mean, I know there's a lot of details in terms of, what do you got there? I see.
The movie that we've been, you know, this is not A New Hope, but this is.
Yep, it's Return of the Jedi.
Yep.
Now, that's not a real Sterling. It was actually a replica from the MGC company, the same company that made that DL44 that used in ESB.
Yep, you can see everything's different about it. It's more stamped. It's more blocky and square. I'm sure this was a lot cheaper to build than the other one. But you know, in the future, I'm going to do this one too. You know? Yeah,
that's going to be a whole, like, that's the thing. Like, the reason we haven't really talked much about this one is because it's a whole different ball game than the other E11. The E11s you see in A New Hope and even Empire Strikes Back are basically the same parts. Whereas this one is completely different. It's a whole different ball game. That Sterling is a replica. It's a replica of a Canadian C1 Sterling from the MGC Model Gun Corporation. I have a picture here from parts of Star Wars. I know you guys mentioned them, and you mentioned parts of Star Wars in your last 2 episodes.
Yep.
There's a picture here that they did a nice kind of shows a nice diagram of the parts and stuff like that.
This is Chris Trevis, right? His site.
Yeah, Chris Trevis, parts of Star Wars. I know you mentioned
something. If you haven't been to his site, go there, because you know all the discoveries and everything we know, parts, pieces, finds are all there, and hopefully you'll get digging around and help us find some other stuff.
Yeah, Chris has already made this scope for one of his DL44s, and you sell this scope ring. I know that. Yep. So you're already on your way to making this thing already.
You know, this MGC, that hammer down there at the bottom.
Yes.
Go back to that real quick. Show.
One second.
What is that hammer piece? This.
It's from it's from an MGC SW44. Hang on a second. Yeah, it's from an MGC SW44 Combat Auto. I have some pictures of the boxes of what it's a very obscure, rare model replica.
Well, I'm just going to throw this out here, but if anybody, I need that piece, and if anybody can find that gun for them, I will give them $1,500 for it. Okay, I literally need. I want to copy the real part, not a picture of it. And man, you talk about I don't even know anybody has one of those. You know,
I know
they just don't exist.
They're so rare. I mean, I've seen them pop up on auction sites, and it's just so few and far between. Yeah. It's one of those things, you know. And actually, now that we've talked about that, I'd like to just touch on one more thing, which was the stunt E11 from ESB, also the Snow Troopers ESB E11.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you ought
It's
to talk about that one and the Sandy too.
Yeah, well, it's the sand tree. We can talk about the Sandy as well. This one's got some other parts on it. This was not very seen on screen very often or very much, but again, the Snow Troopers did use it, and it's a stunt E11. It's rubber. It's got some parts. It's got a Sony cassette camcorder part, that's definitely different. This concrete rebar clip, that's different.
Wow.
Yeah, and they put a piece of T-track here in this bottom row, which the other E11 doesn't even have.
Yeah.
It's just a whole extra piece of T-track, N19 scope. But yeah, these pieces of camcorder here, I don't even know. Yeah, it's just weird. That's just weird to me. But I love E11s, but that is the weirdest E11 I've ever seen. And this clip here was also used in the Boba Fett ep3 blaster.
Oh wow,
Again,
that's a part of the scope clamp, isn't it?
Yep, scope mount piece. Again, this is some part to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff in terms of a variance of the E11. Now you were talking about the Sand Trooper, E11.
Yeah, I hear about that one all the time. People still build that.
So that's called a Bapti blaster, and it's quite a concoction. It's quite a Frankenstein job too here. Whoa. So yeah, as you can see, they made a custom grip and a custom trigger guard. There's no trigger at all. There's this custom side plate that's been riveted through here, or this rivet is through the, and they chopped the back end off, which is obviously resin cast. As you can see, it's all solid cast. The front end is steel. It's got a piece of wood inside the magazine. So yeah, and it's got the Z-bend rail on the back. You can see how they riveted the resin cast. The back end of the receiver has been riveted in. It's a cast. This is because when they went to Tunisia to film those Sand Trooper scenes, the gun laws in Tunisia were a lot different than in the UK, where they filmed the rest of most of the movie. So these Tunisia Bapti blasters were not obviously not live fires, as you can see the piece of wood instead of there's no blanks in there. Yeah, so that's the Bapti blaster in a nutshell.
The T-track looks really good in that one too.
Yeah, they did a good job. It's pretty straight. Some of them went on pretty straight. Some of them not so much. Just again, like I said, I think there was obviously a couple different prop guys in the prop department. But that blaster from this book that I was talking about, I have another image of the other side of it that I didn't show. This is the other side. Again, you can see the curly wires added after the fact. Looks like a solid piece of aluminum they put in place the bolt, because you see there's no the handle, the cocking handle's not there, and this solid piece of aluminum or something in there.
Right, they put a tube in there, it looks like.
Yeah, a tube or something, I don't know. Definitely interesting. And there's another picture I have of this blaster from the front. Dark image, very dark image, but it's also in the book as well. Pretty decent picture of the power cylinders here, and you can see the curly wires.
Yeah, look at the mag.
Yeah, see the mag there? Interesting, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite E11s, just because it's like the one I kind of grew up with looking at in books and stuff. So yeah, that's and there's also the other image I showed was from this Imperial Handbook, came from page 108. That was the other image I showed, the official Lucasfilm license published image of the 11, which are, they use them for references sometimes. But I think that pretty much covers everything, Chris.
Well, I'm sure we've missed something, but you know what? This will get people started, down the right path anyway.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know
where this stuff comes from.
We definitely didn't cover every single tiny little detail. That would be like an all-day video if we did that. But I think we've covered the gist of most of the parts and everything. If there's any other questions anybody has, you can always email me or Chris, or message us on Facebook.
Yep.
We're always available. I love to help people with stuff like this, and I love you know, anything I can contribute in any way, I always try to help. So,
you know, me too. And, you know, if anybody's got questions, you know, we'll put a tag at the end of this video where you can see how to get a hold of everybody. And you know, Henry, do you have a website to go see your, or to get on your commission builds? I mean,
I don't. Most of my commissions I do for costumes, it's all private. I do all private sales. I don't actually have an Etsy store or anything because I'm just kind of a one-man show, and word of mouth is plenty enough advertising for me because I'm a busy guy, and yeah, I have a wait list as it is. So if I start advertising, that would just put me behind. So I mean, I don't like to kind of promise the moon when I can't deliver. So
well,
until
that's a good theory, but you know what? If anybody out there needs something sewn like that for Kylo Ren, and did you put the Beskar things out? Are they actually?
Yeah, I did show. I mean, like I kind of showed briefly that I do the Beskar wrap cloth. This, I don't make the Beskar itself. This is Damascus steel. This came from Australia, from a guy named from a company called 05. But I did make the wrap cloth exactly like you see in the show. It's the exact same thing. I studied it. I got all the screen references I could, made it exactly the way the one is, and it's just kind of, you only see it in the show, but it's kind of something to go with the Beskar that I wanted. So I made one, and there's been some interest on that too. So
well,
I do offer
you
that.
know, find Henry on Facebook, or if you know, contact me and I'll put you in contact with you if you're interested in any of that stuff too, because you know, I'm watching you. You're starting to grow with this stuff. You know, you're one man now, but it won't take long.
That might change. I may get a website in the future, but as for now, I'm kind of it's kind of just a one man show, and I'm just trying to keep up with my wait list and work through it as fast as I can, you know. So, but I do, again, if you're interested and you want me to, I can help with. If you're in Canada and you want one of Chris's kits, I can certainly assemble it for you. If you don't feel crafty, if you want someone who knows what they're doing to assemble your prop, I would like to assemble your E11 for you. If you know, I also do sewing as well, and I can help with other props as well, not just the E11. But the E11 isn't just my specialty; it's always been my favorite. But I love all props. So
yeah, and if you need to get a hold of him, like I said, just contact me if you can't find him on Facebook. But you know, Henry, I mean, this will be a great video. I mean, I'm glad that you had the time to do it. I know you've had some personal tragedy, and you know, we've been praying for you on that, and
thanks,
love you like a brother, man. And I was hoping that Randy, your woman there, would pop into the scene there. I wanted to say hey to her.
She was here earlier, but she went to a doctor's appointment and she didn't want to interrupt, so she just she left. But she definitely would love to be here.
No doubt. Well, man, you know, again, thank you for taking time to do this with me, and you know, I think I'm getting invaded back here too. Hang on a second, let me find a key. My wife needs the Porsche key. But you know, go to blasterfactory.com, War Machine, contact me. You go to, this will be on YouTube. Hit like on the YouTube channel, and guys, thanks for joining us. You know,
yeah.
See you next video.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Yes.